Hello there, Josh here from Racing to Profit. In this video, I'm going to whiz through a few of the Ascot handicaps over the first 2 or 3 days, try and highlight some horses of interest that may be worth keeping an eye on, some kind of form that crosses over with some of the horses that ran well, that may be kind of, may potentially go under the radar. We shall see. But yes, I'll just talk through some of my observations. By all means, watch with a notepad. You may agree, disagree, and we will go forward from there. Now, always with Ascot handicaps, they're worth keeping an eye on. I'm a big fan of hot form. I use it plenty to try and get a kind of gauge on how good the race was, how competitive the race was, if certain horses were in and around very well handicapped horses, if they were in and around clearly in form horses, horses of a high level of ability, and that is some indication on whether that horse you're looking at or tracking may be ahead of their mark. And of course, moving forward, they may run in races which are nowhere near as competitive as the races they've been running in here, running against opposition which may not be as well handicapped, and they may have demonstrated a higher class of performance in some of these races, which would be good enough to win other races moving forward simply by a repeat of that level of performance. So hot form I always like to note down. I've recorded a previous video which is on YouTube somewhere a couple of weeks ago looking at a few examples as well, and talking about that in a bit more depth. But yes, if as a starting point with hot form, festival handicaps is never a bad place, because they're obviously a majority of the horses are kind of trying for their lives. Plenty of them are unexposed, and there's more to come, and some of them clearly work out better than others. But as a starting point for that hot form idea, certainly on the flat, Royal Ascot handicaps may not be a bad place to start. As always, generally with my videos, if I'm talking too slowly and you'd like to speed me up, click the cog button down below, and you can adjust the playback speed, put it on 1.25 or 1.5. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel by clicking the big red subscribe button down below, and therefore you'll get notified when a new video drops. Click a thumbs up if you like, a thumbs down if you don't. Post any comments you want, any engagement, click through, head to the blog and say hello if you wish also. But with that said and those introductions out of the way, let's crack on. The first handicap I'm going to look at, which is on Tuesday the 15th of June, was the Ascot Stakes. Let me get rid of my face for now. The result would be useful, wouldn't it? What is the general kind of thing I want to say here? I'm not sure they went overly quick within this race. I'm within GG's Gold, as I am for plenty of my videos, and looking at the results tab. Rashun had some kind of decent level of form to his name. Fairly lightly raced for a staying flat horse, I suppose, but the likes of this Kempton win, this Newbury effort here wasn't too bad at all. Ian Williams said he was a slow starter, and if you could get him out, get him prominent and get him interested, he would race much better. The booking of Will Buick, I suppose, may have been some kind of signal, and maybe that's a general point. He is chasing the Jockeys Championship, so especially when he's booked on something which clearly isn't a Godolphin or Charlie Appleby horse, may be worth always a second glance, because his agent will simply be trying really, really hard to get him on winners and to get him on horses whose connections think are ready to rock and roll, and clearly he's an upgrade on plenty of jockeys, and he's a very, very good rider, as he demonstrated at Ascot and does most days. So that's a kind of general aside, but this was a solid horse. Whether or not this race works out to be a classic, we shall see. But what I did want to say, the kind of next four in were all lightly raced and unexposed within conditions. This was a Willie Mullins horse having his sixth run on the flat. It was only his fourth run in a handicap. It was the furthest trip that he's gone over by far. Look at that, 20 furlongs. The furthest he's gone on the flat in handicaps before that was 10. He moved like a horse who was well handicapped. Obviously, he only went down ahead. It's highly unlikely he's going to be missed next time or his next few starts, but maybe as a horse we would want to keep on side in a staying race. I don't know if Willie Mullins would eye up something like the Cesarewitch, which he has a good record in, near the end of the season or what, but he clearly stays 20 furlongs, which was a question for him. He obviously has options back over hurdles. He had a high cruising speed. Fast ground was clearly no problem for him, and maybe a reason why he would improve further going back over jumps if you got a nice bit of decent ground, possibly. But if you stay 20 furlongs on the flat, you clearly stay a fair bit further over jumps, and it's not impossible he gets 2.5, 3 miles. He's a 6-year-old, but lightly raced, as you can see. But there's clearly more to come from him. He was probably unlucky. He got stuck at the wrong point behind horses. The general point, I suppose, is that he's unexposed. Is Willie Mullins. He stays. He's clearly well handicapped. I would suggest he's well handicapped in every code, and he is going to pop up and win more races, and is clearly a horse to keep on side, I would suggest. Alicia Flame, who I fancied kind of each way for my TV interest, money ran well. Only the 10th run of his life on the flat turf. Again, the furthest he's gone, and it was also the quickest ground. He was a bit outpaced. He did stay on. Will he be better with a bit more cut in the ground? But there's some decent staying handicaps. 1 mile 6 may be within range if it's a fast run race, but clearly 2 miles and further may well be his trip at a galloping track. He can track the pace, get rolling pretty soon. I thought that was an effort which suggested again he may have a decent staying pot in him, maybe back up north, but I'm sure Mick Easterby will find something for him. But he's a stayer that I think I would want to keep on side also. Well, I know I'm not saying anything too dramatic because I'm focusing on the front end of the race here, but even so, Golden Rules, if you watch this race back, I thought that was a remarkable run. Given how keen he was, he basically pulled Frankie's arms out for the whole race. He only faded late, got beaten 2 lengths. Again, that was a massive step up in trip. First time beyond 14 furlongs. The quickest ground he'd faced also. It could be he's better with a bit of cut. He clearly stays well, and when he learns to drop his head and settle, this was only the 6th run of his life, he's clearly going to do some damage. From a mark of 93, I'm not sure if he's probably gone up a bit. It was a career best Racing Post rating of 100. That would indicate he's progressive, as you'd expect from his lightly raced profile. He's out of Golden Horn. He's probably quite hardy, tough. Like I said, clearly stays well. There are options throughout the rest of the season if he learns to settle. And his running style of being able to race prominently is useful. Also, the same with Cape Gentleman. I mean, this is the 3rd one. Another of the Irish, of the Willie Mullins one, and this Emmett Mullins horse, who were just lightly raced. He moved like a horse who was probably, well, it's certainly well handicapped. He was backed off the boards. He was held up in the rear, maybe poorly positioned in a race where they didn't necessarily go overly quick, I don't think, and Rashun was quite fairly prominently placed throughout the race. He made up plenty of ground. I'm not quite sure. Well, no, he did keep on and was nearest finish. Again, what was I going to say? That was the quickest ground he's faced. Would he be better with a bit more cut? But he did stay on. He did pick up ground. That looks like he stays. Strongly run race over a bit shorter. Again, he's clearly well handicapped in every code, probably won't be missed. I did have a look. That was his first flat run since this race at the Curragh on the 11th of October. I think he ran here like a well-handicapped horse, and that this form and those horses mentioned may work out quite well. You had Coeur de Lion here, who was last year's winner. He was outpaced on the ground. This was the quickest ground he'd faced. Again, he might drop a pound or two, but he clearly stays well. Probably wants it not to be as quick, and he probably would have appreciated a stronger pace, but I suppose there were plenty of these in a bunch as well further back. So we shall see how it works out. But Cape Gentleman, the penultimate time he ran on the flat was this race at the Curragh in the Irish Cesarewitch. Aircraft Carrier is the horse I want to highlight if you want one. If you're looking at collateral form, I suppose, as a horse who may do some damage. I'd like to think he's still in training. Obviously, Cape Gentleman won a couple of times since over jumps. You had a couple of winners, subsequent winners in behind from this race, also giving it some strength and depth. Aircraft Carrier hasn't run on the flat since. As you can see here, this was back in October, ran in December in a handicap hurdle, pulled up. Nace back in a handicap hurdle, and didn't do too much either. He hasn't been seen since the 31st of January, so he's had a few months off. Whether he's just having a break and then he's going to come back again in the autumn when the rain comes a bit, but that Cesarewitch run would suggest you know, he bumped into a good one there, is what I'm saying. He kept on, he was going well on at the line. If he's still on a mark of 85 or thereabouts, for a horse who is only had 7 handicap runs on the flat, he clearly stays quite well. That was a decent bit of form. He might be a horse staying kind of 2 mile plus on the flat when they return him to the flat that may be worth keeping an eye on, because it could be that he's fairly well handicapped and may pick up something in Ireland, so that might be a horse to take away, as well as those other things that I've said from that race. But that's all I want to say on the Ascot Stakes, and I will move on to the Royal Hunt Cup on day 2. So here we have the Royal Hunt Cup. This was run on the 16th. The Wednesday at 5 o'clock, we had Real World. Do go and watch the video back. He won, of course, on the low numbers, and he won like a group horse in a handicap, careering away, where it was possibly better to have raced near side. Generally, the week would suggest that. Obviously, not for every race, but he had to do a lot of his own donkey work, and that was a quite incredible performance. I doubt he's going to be 18 to 1 on his next start. What can we highlight here? Well, do go and watch this video back. I do want to touch on Grove Ferry. He, to me, if you watch the video back, and as the kind of the comment suggests, midfield going easily, waiting for room. And if you watch that back, David Probert was sat still, I think, for about half a furlong, from kind of 3 furlong out pole to 2 furlongs out possibly. Then he got a gap and got motoring. The Michael Stout horse possibly got rolling just a bit quicker, and Astro King won his side well enough in the end, and he's clearly well handicapped, but again may not be missed next time. Grove Ferry, yeah, he travelled to me like a horse who's still ahead of his mark. I think Astro King's been put up £4 to 102 for effectively winning his side. I'm not sure if Grove Ferry's been put up. He may have been put up £1 or 2 also. But yeah, on the video replay watching, I suppose, he moved like a horse who may not have finished winning yet in handicaps. This Chester race where he bolted up off 97, that produced loads of subsequent winners at an okay level, not a superb level, but plenty of subsequent winners were in behind in that Chester race. He looks like he's coming to his own. A strongly run race looks ideal. On that evidence, if he learns to settle, which I think he's now doing, he's been fresh and keen in some of these races. I think that cost him at Doncaster. If he settles strong pace on this evidence, given how well he kept on in a kind of ferociously run 8 furlong at that stiff 8 Royal Ascot handicap, may suggest that 10 furlongs could be worth a go in time. But obviously there's plenty of decent 8 furlong to 10 furlong handicaps coming up in the weeks ahead, and he is one that I wouldn't necessarily want to readily oppose. Like I said, in time, as more of these races, more of these horses run, we will get an idea whether this Hunt Cup form is worth much or not. Astro King was clearly unexposed, and more to come. One of these stout 4-year-old improvers. He's given plenty of time. He hasn't over-raced them when they're younger, and now he will pay dividends. I want to touch on this Thirsk Hunt Cup and highlight a horse that may be worth keeping an eye on, and maybe you'll be able to spot it. We have Storting, who ran well at Epsom and went lame, and he was staying on there, I think. So he was kind of franking the form in terms of running okay in a Class 2, half-decent Class 2 handicap. Although the ground went a bit funny there, and obviously it's Epsom, which can be a horses for courses track, and some don't handle it. Astro King effectively won his side in that Hunt Cup, as just touched on. He clearly came into this Thirsk race as a well-handicapped horse. And therefore, Nugget, given he hasn't run since for Richard Hannon, this was on the 1st of May. We're obviously kind of 7 weeks since his run, so I'm not sure if he's had a held up, a setback or something else. But I would suggest that this form, well, Astro King has franked that form, and Nugget is obviously only a 4-year-old also. That was only the 8th run of his life. He was, towards the rear, maybe poorly positioned. He made up plenty of ground throughout the race, ran on well towards finish, and was doing his best work late. He's also posted 2 kind of career back-to-back Racing Post ratings which are above his current mark, so I think he's still open to progress. That was a decent win in that Newbury race also. Big field, strong pace. I would suggest that Astro King has franked that form based on that Ascot run, and he, when he comes out, if he comes out again, hopefully he's not got a bad injury. If he has had a hold up or a problem, he might be worth keeping on side, and obviously a few of these in behind have run well since also. So that might be another horse to take away. Grove Ferry, like I said, I like how he moved through it. I still think could do some damage from that mark. Real World obviously probably won't be seeing Handicaps again. The Noel Mead horse, well, I mentioned Brunch first. He has some good form. Again, lightly raced, which makes me think this race might work out okay, because some of these horses could still have a bit more to come. Brunch is tough, hardy, loves York. You would be surprised if Michael Dodds does not find something for him again at York at some point. A couple of wins there. He ran well at Doncaster in a half-decent race. He ran well here, where he probably hit the front a bit too soon. The winner came this side. He was on the far side if you watch that back. The front 2 were a fair way clear. I still think a mark of 104 here, and obviously he won't go up. Connections will be hoping he might get dropped a pound or 2. I still think that's workable. This was the quickest ground he'd raced on. Dodds thought it was the quickest ground, and that posed a bit of a challenge. Well, in any case, he thinks he's better without much firm in the ground, and I suppose he was a bit short the room. Did he get outpaced time? Possibly. He was staying on. He was 5th of 20 on this side, and he was running on again at the finish. So again, obviously he needs a fair bit to drop right, but a strongly run 8 furlongs back at maybe one of his favourite tracks. You can see some of his form there. May work out well. Johan here, I mean, all of his form's got a decent look. He won a Salisbury Class 2 handicap yesterday as I record this. So yeah, 12 races. He's been in the places, 7 of them, including 4 wins. He's hardy, he's tough, he likes winning. That was an okay run. I would keep him on side back up north. And if you like playing over the water in Ireland, again, another lightly raced horse. This one for Noel Mead. He's having a few more flat runners. Again, this was the quickest ground he's faced. All of his better form, or form to date, maybe that's just because that's the ground and how it's been in Ireland. Plenty of soft ground form, as you can see here. He's run well over 12 furlongs. He was out the back here. He was a bit outpaced. He switched wide into the middle of the track, and generally the middle was the worst place to be, certainly for the first few days before the rain came, and it was much quicker on the going stick, and by the evidence of what happened on either wing, and certainly towards the stand side. So he challenged up the middle of the track, which wasn't ideal. Again, he didn't have the pace. He looked outpaced on that ground and that distance combination, but he was staying on at the end. And yeah, we shall see how well this race works out, but most of these were kind of unexposed. Some of them brought some good form to the table, and I would suggest that he, back in Ireland, maybe back up to 10 furlongs, softer ground, if he can sit a bit handier, which he did in this Curragh race when he won here. I suspect a mark of 96 is still workable. This was only the 8th handicap of his life. You can see there, pretty consistent, only out of the places twice. And if you ignored the far side in this group, he was 4th of 20 on the near side group. So I think he might be worth keeping an eye on when back over the water. Like I said, slightly softer ground, maybe a step back up in trip. But this race could be one to keep an eye on. We shall see if the likes of Astro Kings come out and win again. If Real World comes out and wins a group race. If Grove Ferry comes out and wins again. Lafayette if he does something, if Brunch does something, so on and so forth. And you know, when a couple of those start to go in, that might give some weight to the form. If an Astro King or Grove Ferry obviously win anytime soon, that would obviously help and enhance some of the thinking behind the horses that chase them home on this near side. But that's the Hunt Cup. I'm going to quickly jump to the Wednesday. Quickly jump to the Thursday, I should have said. And a couple of handicaps here to look at. I'll try and whiz through. We've got the 5 p.m. Britannia Stakes Heritage Handicap. You know, horse 3-year-olds could be open to any amount of improvement. The one horse I'll only mention, I should think he's gone into everyone's notebook. I may not be saying anything too out of the ordinary, but it is the William Haggas horse, Due by Honour, who was interesting beforehand. He did best and won his side. You know, this race was dominated by those on the high. He did best of those on the low side. If you watch that back, he looked like he was under the pump under this 8 furlongs on good to firm ground some way out, and all he's done is stayed on. It was his first run in 250 days. He was clearly tuned up and fit enough because he was running on at the line, but some training performance from William Haggas, who's having another superb season so far. Again, that was the quickest ground he's faced. Like I said, first run in 250 days. All he was doing was staying on there. It'll be interesting if Haggas is tempted to step him up a bit in trip. But you know, a big field, strong pace is clearly no issue for him. I'm going to be shocked if Haggas in this horse doesn't pick up some half decent pot or two before the season is out, just because of all those factors. He was running on, he was staying on, did best of those on the far side. He came from near the back of the far side, made up plenty of ground through the final couple of furlongs, was doing all of his best work late, wasn't stopping come the line. It was only the 5th run of his race. He looked like an old pro. He's got some half decent form down here. Like I said, we shall see with all of these races how they work out, but that was his first run after a gelding operation, first run tongue tie. He isn't a horse I would necessarily want to oppose with a win-only bet on another horse, for example, if he ends up being a short price wherever he goes in the coming weeks. But you can see plenty of his races here have produced numerous subsequent winners, which is always a half decent indication, including this York race where he ran well on soft. So clearly, you know, plenty of he's versatile, it looks like, ground wise, because he looked like he was putting down and stayed on well enough. And again, that was a career best Racing Post rating. I haven't seen if they've whacked him up a couple of pounds, I'm not sure. But this race, again, generally, as always, packed with unexposed horses. Only age 3. We shall see how it works out, but he was the interesting one for me, having watched it. Sir Mark Prescott's didn't run that well. It was his first run on good to firm ground, and it was his first run on turf. I thought, you know, he's very unexposed. Prescott's having a decent season. Some of his forms worked out okay down here. That was clearly a step backwards, but he's a lightly raced horse, which Prescott will clearly get something more from at some point. You know, yet to finish out the first 2 in his 4 races to date before rocking up in this Ascot race. Maybe it happened a bit too quick. Maybe the ground was too firm, didn't like the track. Who knows? Maybe he got upset before the race. But that might be worth keeping an eye on because he was very, very lightly raced. And like I said, that Haggas horse, maybe he'll plot something up at Goodwood, an easy 10. Maybe 8 furlongs at York or 10 furlongs at York. Who knows? But you know, he's one to keep an eye on, and this race is one to keep an eye on to see if it works out okay. What else do I want to flick through as I'm ticking around to 23 minutes? The King George V Stakes, again, another 3-year-old only handicap. We will see. Time will tell how well this works out. The Beckett horse is clearly a nice type. So Lamorak took a while to warm up and came from quite far back. So that could be marked up. The one I want to take forwards, I think, is the Appleby horse. I was interested in him before as kind of, again, TV each way interest. He managed to cling on for 4th. If you watch that back, first it was his first run over 12 furlongs, maybe a fast run 10 is ideal. We shall see. It'll be interesting if they drop him back in trip. Also because he was keen, and that's the bit I want to highlight. You watch that race back. He ran with the choke out to my eyes. He looked like he got in a muck sweat before the race. He was weak in the market, weak enough. He was kind of, oh no, sorry, his price didn't really move. He was around the same price in the morning, I think. But he didn't settle, he didn't drop his head. He looked like, to my eyes, like he was racing with a choke out for pretty much the whole race. Will was trying to get him settled. He raced fairly prominently. I just think he over raced a bit, and then he got a bit tired late on. If he had settled, given, you know, he beat Surefire, who's clearly franked that form in this race. So some of these form lines are working out well. Some of these races are working out well. This Windsor race, obviously Siscani went in again and then run well there. Surefire's 2 from 2. You know, a couple of these in behind have only raced once. Beating All, Sir Michael Stout, Oz Legend. Some of these, you know, even produce winners further back here. So these 3 horses here, I won't dive into them now. You can take a closer look if you want. Oz Legend, Beating All, Handsome. Given what these 2 horses have done at Royal Ascot, and since, given some of the winners further back here, those 3 may be worth keeping an eye on, keeping worth a chance in the future. Maybe I haven't taken a look at them yet. I don't know if they didn't win because of conditions or deep race, or they've run well. But this was clearly a deep novice stakes, a deep Windsor novice stakes, and those 3 might be worth keeping an eye on, as I said, because of what those horses have gone on to do. I still think Siscani, or however you pronounce it, he's well handicapped, a couple of decent RPRs there above his mark. If he learns to drop his head, settles, he is going to win more races. He's probably going to win something half decent handicapping wise from 96. Again, could he be a Goodwood type? Will Charlie Appleby drop him down to 10 furlongs, a strong run 10? But again, that he just didn't settle, never dropped his head. Maybe he needs to make all, maybe he needs to get to the front in a smaller field, and that's how best he'll settle, because he was a bit lit up. But I thought in that context that was a decent run. But this obviously could be a race to keep an eye on. Again, another of those. If some of these form lines start stacking up, if some of these horses here start coming out and winning, you can obviously then start noting the horses that were in and around them, because this Britannia, this King George V Stakes could end up being deep enough, I think. I don't know if there's any other horses I wanted to flag. I suppose First Light did all the donkey work on the front end. I'd need to watch again to see if he over raced a little bit, but maybe he did a bit too much, possibly. You know, the first couple here came from towards the rear. These 2 were kind of more prominent, as was the Frankie Dettori horse. It did pay to be a bit more patiently ridden, so that's something to keep in mind also. But I think that's all I want to say on that particular race. Plenty there to ponder. I think that's all I want to say for this video. Or is it? Was there anything in the Buckingham Palace Stakes which I wanted to flag? I don't think there was on this particular occasion. So I think ticking around to 27-28 minutes. The longest I make these videos, I try and keep them to 30 minutes, which I will have done here. There we go, back again. Hopefully, yeah, I've said something interesting there. A few horses to keep an eye on. A few horses who ran better, or could have run better if they'd have settled or got a run. A few horses that look like they're still well ahead of their mark. And obviously some collateral form ideas with some horses from other races who have finished in and around horses who ran well in these Royal Ascot handicaps. So hopefully a handful of horses there to add to your trackers. Something to ponder. Do go back and watch some of those races again. Some of those other horses, that Windsor novice race I touched on, so on and so forth. Some of these form lines could start building up. Some of these horses will race in, will turn up in races which are not as competitive, or they will run a bit better, settle a bit better, show their best. But I would like to think plenty of the horses I've mentioned will be winning more races. Hopefully some of those races will be at a backable price. and that you and I can land on them. But with that said, yeah, hopefully I've said something interesting. Do post a comment, any questions below. But for now, thanks for watching. As always, best of luck with any bets moving forwards. And until the next time, this is Josh saying do click like, do click subscribe if you so wish, and I will be back soon. So yeah, thanks for watching and see you soon. Bye for now.